Obviously, there are more than just 6 different styles of knives, and we're going to talk about that today in this episode, continuing our comparison videos. Now, if you haven't already, go watch the other 3 videos that I've done. We compared a Bushtool with a French trade style, we compared a Nesmic with a Kephart style, and then we compared a couple weeks ago a Puko with a Woodlore. And obviously those are not all the styles there are. There's Bowies, there's long knives, there's all kinds of things that people use. But what I wanted to talk about today is when people started hybridizing or mixing the designs together, and starting that with the Bushtool blade mixed with the Woodlore style handle. This one in particular is called the Woodsman. It's by one of my favorite makers, Joe Honeycutt, and one of my other favorite makers, William Collins. And before we jump into this and before we talk about it too much, I want to give a huge shout out to my friend. I'm going to pronounce his name completely wrong, so I'm going to put his name down here at the bottom of the screen. Vasil? Sorry man. I'm really bad at naming, at pronouncing names unless I've heard it a few times. He is lending me this knife. I made a sheath for it, but he is lending me this so that I can make a video with it and show you the differences here. So we're going to jump in. Super excited for this. Thanks for joining me. One of the problems that I have as I collect what I call relic knives, which are knives that are really no longer produced, is that when people ask me, oh, how do I get that knife? I really want one of those. I have to tell them, sorry, they're not available. I don't know what to tell you. I brought it in the box. But this knife is one of those knives that I never thought I'd get a hold of again, but someone on Bushcraft USA forum was kind enough to offer me his. Couldn't be happier with it. Super awesome guy. Had good conversations with him since then. But this is the Woodsman by Blackfeather Knives. Bring in closer so you can see what I'm talking about here. All right, so what you might see is a similar blade to the Bushtool that we've already talked about, and a handle that is very similar to the Woodlore that we've already talked about. And that's exactly what we're discussing in this video, is how over time people began to hybridize the design. So they took best aspects of one, mixed it with best aspects of the other, and turned them into almost new styles of knives, like this one. Now, they're not all called Woodsmans when you blend those 2 particular designs together, but I just thought it was funny that this Woodsman is very similar to the other Woodsman I'm about to show you. But yeah, we'll get into this use in just a sec. Here is the William Collins Woodsman. I think this is his classic bushcrafting knife. I made this sheath for it, so I'll bring in closer here. Again, like I said, Vasil commissioned me to make him a sheath so that he could carry this neck style. So that's why there's no like belt loops or anything like that, but hanging from the neck. Natural canvas micarta. You can see the sheath locked in there, very tight, and almost barely get it out. Nice sturdy click, no rattle whatsoever. Plus a very cool pattern. I'll put the name of it down in the bottom here. All right, there's the knife itself. You can see, very similar to the other Woodsman I just showed you. You've got that flat-ish spine, the continuous curvish blade-ish. I always say ish because it's not exactly the same. Contoured handle to fit comfortably in the hand. Difference is, this one is in Nitro V steel, whereas the other one is 01. So what I'm going to start telling people is if they want a Blackfeather Woodsman, and as most of you should know by now, very difficult to get a hold of one because of Joe Honeycutt and his work schedule and all that. I'm going to start recommending this knife. Very similar in size, shape, very comfortable in the hand, and you can get it in different steels, which is awesome. You know, having a Woodsman in Nitro V stainless steel means it's impervious to weather. So ideal for so many different locations where the 01 tool steel Woodsman might not be perfect. So let's compare them. I always like to start things off with feather sticking, not because it's just a simple skill, but one, it's a very valuable skill to have, and also it gives you a really good idea of how the edge will perform. It can really help you hone in that, hand-eye coordination, that feel of where the edge is and where it's going to cut well. So here I'm starting out with the Blackfeather Knives Woodsman, and you can see that it's performing as expected. A Scandinavian grind slices through wood really nicely. Once you figure out where the edge is, it's much easier to do fine curls. Now we're going to move on to the William Collins Woodsman Classic. Takes a little bit of getting used to switching from knife to knife, just because the geometry is ever so slightly different. But as you can see, once you kind of get into the feel for it, once you get used to it, it's very comparable. Next thing, as you can see, I'm going to do some notching with these knives. This is a skill that, just like the other one, gives you an idea of how the edge performs, gives you a feel for the handle. It's a little more complex than just feather sticking, but it also gives you some insight on how it would perform as a carving knife. I don't know, bushcraft task. I'm just going to do a number 7 notch with the Blackfeather Woodsman. I think this is an important notch to know. It's very simple, very basic. Shouldn't take too long to not just carve it out, but also make it real clean. So take a look at that. Nice sharp edges. And for the testing of the William Collins Woodsman Classic, decided to do an X notch. What notch is this? I'm forgetting the name of this one. Should look it up. Okay, just looked it up. People are calling it a pot hanger notch. Cool, very traditional sounding. All right, doing that, you start out with an X, clean out 3 of the edges, leave one that looks like a bird beak, and give it a little hook so you carve into it. This notch takes a little bit more skill, a little bit more time, but again, it really shows you how the tip of the knife performs, how the edge performs, how it handles. So I like doing this notch as well. Both are very handy notches to know in your bushcraft arsenal. And as you can see, once again, nice and clean. There's an obvious hook to it, and the knife performed fantastic. This next test, it's not really a test of the knife itself, but it's kind of a test of the spine of the knife, so more from the maker's side. I just want to do some scraping. This is going to create some fine fluff. You can use it as a tinder, or if you use the same technique on a ferroceram rod, get some nice sparks. But as you can see, Blackfeather Woodsman, nice fine curls. And then moving on to the William Collins Classic Woodsman Classic. Man, I'm going to never get that name right. They just keep mixing up in my brain. Also, very nice fine curls. Both are performing really well. Not too surprising to me. Both makers do a good job on their spines. Now this is something that I don't generally do with a knife, but I thought an edge toughness test. We're going to do some cross batoning. So real quick, cross baton through a small branch. Wouldn't do this on a regular basis. Not really necessary, especially if you have a saw or a hatchet. But just to test the edge, I wanted to do this with these 2 knives. Now obviously there's a lot more we could do to test these 2 knives out and compare them to each other, but I hope from the little stuff that I did for feather sticking, notching, scraping, and cross batoning, you can see that not only are both fantastic knives that can handle a lot of woodworking use, but they're very comparable. There's not a huge noticeable difference when I'm working with them. It did take me a little bit of time to get used to the different profile in, not the profile, but like the edge shape. Everybody puts a slightly different bevel on their knives when they're grinding them out, and yeah, so switching back and forth like that always takes like a couple minutes of getting used to, but once you kind of get a feel for it, especially with the feather sticking, I don't know, there's not much difference in that aspect of things. I do want to say that, you know, the Woodsman by William Collins is more readily available, so that does make it a plus, as well as the fact that it's attainable in different steels. The Woodsman from Blackfeather Knives, I don't think he's made a Woodsman, gosh, 4 years or more since the last Woodsman came out of his shop. So it's been a little while, and they've all been in 01 tool steel as far as I know. Maybe there are a couple in RWL or something, but that's all that I've seen so far, is like people walking around. So I'm gonna call it quits. I'm gonna get out of here. I appreciate you watching. Leave any comments down below. I'd love to read them and chat back and forth about different knives. Gonna keep going with the comparisons since people seem to be enjoying them, and I'm enjoying them too, getting to work with different knives and test them out. So I really appreciate the comments and the support, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.